everyone. I'm Leah Zickman. I'm the executive director here at Hourglass. As a show of hands, I'd just love to know who's here for their first Hourglass forum. Awesome. Welcome. Just for a little bit of background for you, Hourglass provides research and forums such as these ones on key quality of life issues here in Lancaster County. You are welcome to become a member at any point. Feel free to connect with me. We have some resources on the way out if you're interested in continuing with Hourglass. I will start this off by just sharing that data centers and the AI boom are on everyone's minds. It kind of feels like we all have different questions and things that we want to understand about what this will look like in the near future, in 5 years, in 10 years, what we need to know as a community. And at the Hourglass, it's really important to us to get local experts to speak on what they know and what they're working on. So before I pass this off, I just want to say thank you to our speakers for being here today. We'll have Art kind of introduce them a little bit more formally. And I also want to thank our forum sponsors, Rogers and Associates. I want to thank Shoemaker for our live streaming services, and Millersville and the Ware Center for hosting us. On a very cold day like today, where we have about 30 people online via live stream, we're very thankful to be able to offer a couple of different types of absorbing the content that we're sharing. So thank you to all of our sponsors, and thank you to Caleb Bornman for our event photography. I will now pass this off to Art Mann, the chairman of the Hourglass board, who will talk about who's here to speak with you all today.
Yeah, welcome. The Hourglass tries to look ahead 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and we saw that this huge demand for electric power is coming online. And I think everybody knows, well, where are we going to get all this power? Keep in mind that from Limerick nuclear plant down the Susquehanna to Peach Bottom is the world's largest collection of power plants. Pennsylvania exports 80% of its power to other states. So we're sitting in the middle of a huge power generation complex. So what part of the problem is, where is the additional power going to come from? And how are we going to deal with it, and how is it going to affect people's power costs? So today we have Eric Sauder, the president and founder of RegenAll, a Lancaster nonprofit focused on local climate solutions across rural and urban communities. And then we'll hear from Lori Porreca, the owner and president of AI Energy, a WBENC certified energy consulting firm here in Lancaster. And Chris Buck, who is our manufacturing vice president for Donsco. We are a large user of wheel pool in a Wrightsville plant, anywhere from 15 to 17 megawatts for melting iron. So we're, especially Chris, is deeply immersed in how the whole electrical generation and distribution system works for Pennsylvania. And he'll have also, it's one thing to say, well, ain't it awful, but I think Chris is going to have some helpful hints and what you and people can do personally to reduce their own power costs. So with that, I'll turn it over to our speakers.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Eric Sauder. As Art said, I started an organization called RegenAll here in town. It's a nonprofit focused on building local climate resilience. So here is our mission, that we catalyze local climate solutions for a more resilient future. So our philosophy is that a vast amount of people want to do more about climate work, and so we help to form the local nonpartisan goals that focus on making real progress here in town. So the context that we're coming into this with, I'm sure you're familiar with, are these two sites for 300 megawatt data centers. The one to the east, the right of your screen, is at the Greenfield location near the Greenfield exit, and then the one on the west, the left side, is by Longs Park. So these are both slated to be 300 megawatt data centers. Now, this is, there we go. I think it's important to kind of put this into context of where we fit into the local and state realm with this work too. Governor Shapiro has said that he's all in on an AI, and the Team PA strategy is looking to develop 10 to 12 gigawatts of power generation to largely supply these new AI data centers. So our projects are pretty small in the grand scheme of things, but I want to show how they're still really significant. So in addition to that, some of the way that this industry is moving, this is a rendering of Meta's Hyperion data center that's planned in Louisiana. It will be 5 gigawatts, and so this image is showing that the size and scale of that superimposed over Manhattan Island. So nobody's planning to slow down with this. This is pitted as not just a winner-takes-all contest between the biggest companies in the United States, but also between the US and China. So every single throttle is like all pushed to the floor for this work and speed and development. And as a preface to these conversations, I also want to share that I use AI tools really heavily for work. I split my time between RegenAll and Team Ag. That's a local agricultural engineering firm. And as an engineer, I find these tools incredibly valuable. With them as a collaborator, I've learned new software programs, conducted research, developed code, designed circuits that have extended my capacity, sped all kinds of things up. I appreciate what they can do for me and the discoveries that they can unlock. This is a really exciting time. I think it's also important to recognize as we start out with this, there's a really small number of people in the US that are driving this work forward. They have basically the money to do anything that they want. And also, if you followed science fiction your whole life, like, this is a really interesting time. Like, they read it too, and they're basically doing this stuff. And I listened to a number of techno accelerationist podcasts that talk very seriously about disassembling the solar system, building a Dyson sphere around the sun, and becoming a multi-galactic civilization. So, like, whether you feel that that is on the near-term horizon or farther, that's what the people that are building this stuff have been inspired by and see themselves very well on the track, on the trajectory to do that. So I also have plenty of concerns about the way AI-produced information is flooding our information environment. I have an 8-year-old and 11-year-old, so it's a wild time. But that all as preface for this. So RegenAll developed a greenhouse gas inventory for the county, which an important part of that was it allowed us to go through the analytical task of counting out how much energy we use. So tallying our kilowatt hours for electricity, our gas consumption, stationary fuels, those sorts of things. And what we see from that is this general breakdown here. I have both Lancaster County's total electric consumption and Lancaster City's electric consumption here, but then also the data center consumption. And if you look down here, this is the thing that I've just been trying to get out there. The data centers will use like 10x of the city's entire existing electric consumption right now, which is wild for two buildings. And then that is also like 82% of our entire county electric consumption as well. So I got to attend the city council's meeting with the community benefits agreement here the other day, which was one of the more contentious meetings that I've ever gotten to be at, where they adopted the community benefits agreement. I believe that there are a lot of rightful concerns that people are bringing forward with impacts from data centers. The things that people spoke about ranged from water, noise, emissions, and energy consumption. In this situation, I believe that largely because the data centers are located so close to the city, there are very different designs that are proposed for this compared to many others. So these are air-cooled units, so water consumption is similar to the prior uses from LSC Communications. From a noise standpoint, there are limits that are imposed by the community benefits agreement. From an emissions standpoint, largely that comes from on-site generators. The electric grid that provides power to that site, I believe, was down just a handful of times in the last 5 years. None of which of those would have ever kicked on the generators, and they'll have battery backups for the facilities. So while there are plenty of other examples of other data centers and other locations where these impacts have been really serious, and there is really good reason to be concerned about them, I think a lot of those things are addressed. I have been working to focus our attention on just that massive amount of energy, which is the theme of today. A few items that are in the community benefits agreement, which is available online to read. It adds additional oversight for the city. It provides $20 million in different impact funds that the city is able to distribute in 2 categories, one for sustainability and environmental work, and the other for economic development. Yeah, I know this is a very small percentage of the total budget, but it is a way that gives additional teeth and oversight for the city. There's also a commitment to purchase 95% of power from renewable sources. Some of my concerns with that are that these aren't necessarily new sources. So you could imagine a forest being clear-cut somewhere to put solar panels in, and that check in the box, you know. So I think where that comes from is really important, and that's really the main current of money that's flowing through this project for that energy. My hope is that we would be able to find ways to install more of those renewables here in a way that allowed us to catalyze our renewable build-out. I also have concerns about the way that we're seeing a number of our existing power sources, whether it's 3 Mile Island or the hydroelectric plants, that the consumption from them is getting bought up by these big tech companies and held by them. So the challenge for us to decarbonize our local grid gets harder as those private companies basically own that power asset. So just a few comments and thoughts on that as well. So with that context, I've been advocating for 3 different solutions that we could look at. One is for really focused on helping especially the most vulnerable in our community be protected against potentially variable energy costs in the future. The city's Healthy Homes program that has been largely focused on lead is a tremendous asset to expand and grow into one that's also adding a lot of energy efficiency work to reduce the consumption costs. Along with that, we have incredible workforce development resources to build the skills and build the capacity here to improve our ability to get energy efficiency and renewable projects built out in Lancaster. And so I think we have incredible opportunity there. And then a third that I am excited about is that when you have a 300 megawatt electric use, that all is converted to heat. And right now the proposal is that that just goes up into the air. And I'm really interested in several other examples, especially in Scandinavian countries, of ways where we have utilized that waste heat for local heating capacity. So many of these locations have different district heating already. So there's existing loops that you could dump that energy into. It's coming out at about 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So they do have a heat upgrade plant that is raising that temperature from 110 degrees to 140. But what we really have here is a corridor between the two data centers with the largest concentration of our industrial capacity in Lancaster. I think we could build an advanced energy corridor that transfers heat, off-takes heat in a helpful way from a number of those companies, as well as these two data centers. And we would have the option to build out gradually heat distribution network that could heat our city. 300 megawatts is more than enough, and we have 600. So there is as I was saying, there's an example of that with Meta's data center in Denmark. There are several others in Ireland and in a few other Scandinavian countries. So certainly worth us exploring farther. I think that's enough for a start at this point, but certainly available for questions, and hand it off to Lori.
I thought Costco was just going to put a garden on top of their roof, like green roof with all that heat being, expelled. So I'm Lori from A1 Energy, A1, not AI. I thought that was a good slip you made. So I'm Lori from A1 Energy. I'm humbled to be here today. I'm so thankful to the board for inviting me. A1 Energy, we're an energy consultant to large industrial, commercial, and some institutional, some agricultural clients, but primarily we focus on large industrials. So just real quickly, we work in energy efficiency. We work in helping our clients buy competitively their gas and electricity, and then we're very involved in the development of several projects, such as solar PV, cogen, behind the meter self-generation projects. So I will tell you right now, we are not involved in in the development of either one of the data centers. We work with another client that is attempting to potentially build a data center in York County, and we work with some cryptocurrency developers, and they're very large loads. So we have some experience in it, but I'm not involved at all in the data centers. So today I'm going to try to answer the question, will my electric bill increase due to the new data centers in Lancaster? And the answer is no. And are there any questions? One slide, one answer. No. So, anybody? So, before I am going to show you another slide, but I just want everybody to understand electricity rates are not, they're not defined by a local area, right? So what happens in Lancaster City and Lancaster County does not affect our electric bill. There's two geographic areas that do affect our electric bills. So one is your utility. So most of us in the room are probably in PPL. So if you're within PPL, what happens in PPL can affect your electricity bill, and what happens in PJM can affect your electricity bill. But a data center in Lancaster doesn't have an effect directly on the citizens of Lancaster. Does that make sense? Okay, so I really do just have one slide. So this is a typical electric bill, and I'm just going to kind of walk through to help you, hopefully help you understand the impact that data centers can have on our bills and why. So PPL, if you're in PPL territory, or you could be in Med-Ed, but PPL territory, it covers 29 counties. It serves about 1.5 million customers. And this is just a side note. Right now, PPL's peak load, their peak demand, is 7.5 gigawatts. Okay, that's 7,500 megawatts. These two data centers are going to be about 600 megawatts together, right? So the total load in PPL over 29 counties is 7,500 megawatts. So it's a significant load that's coming in. In PPL's third quarter report that just came out in November, they stated that they have projected additional 7.4 gigawatts coming on by summer of 2030. There's 7.5 gigawatts now, and they're projecting another 7.4 gigawatts. Yeah, so they're doubling their load. So they have 14 to 20 gigawatts of applications in the queue right now that are advanced. So the first thing you do when you're going to want to put in a large load, a new load, or extend your load, you have to go through a pre-approval application, interconnection pre-approval. So they have 14 to 20 gigawatts already far down that road. So those are pretty certain projects. Something could still blow them up, but they're probably going to happen. And PPL stated that they have another 70 gigawatts in the queue. It's a tremendous amount of load that's projected or could come on in PPL. So that will affect us. And just a side note, PJM, well, never mind. I'll get back to that in a minute. So from the utility perspective, right over there on the far right of the screen, you see PPL distribution. So everybody's bill looks somewhat like this, whether you're a company, this is a residential bill. But if you have a business, farm, whatever you have, your bill's going to look similar. So the distribution charge, the delivery charge, that's from PPL. What that covers is for PP&L to maintain all of the wires within their utility. So once the electricity comes into the PPL territory, PPL is responsible to have all the poles and wires to take it to your home, to your plug, or to your business. So those costs that we pay on our distribution charge covers the maintenance of all of that. The data center is paying for the upgrades that they need to make, number one, at the sites, so the new substations they need to put in. Any of us would do that. If you were going to build a new factory and you were going to increase your electric load and you needed a new substation, you'd be required to pay for that yourself. The utility doesn't typically pay for that. They're also going to pay for a part of the transmission upgrade, and that is to get the power to their site. Again, if I was going to put a solar PV project in on my property, I would also be required to pay for the improvements that needed to be made, if any, on the transmission. So it's not like they're doing a big, huge favor. It's normal. But they're going to pay for it because it will be high charges. The benefit of that is other customers along the line may benefit. So if whatever improvements they're going to make, if I had a company next door or close by and I wanted to expand my consumption, I might not have to pay for the improvements because they were already paid for. So there's a plus in there. But that rate shouldn't really change. The distribution, because of data centers, that part of your bill should not change too much. Typically, that part of your bill is about 36% of your total bill. I will make a note, though, that PPL has just requested from the PUC $365 million increase. And that is, they haven't asked for an increase for over 7 years. And that's really just an increase to help maintain the poles and the wires, and all of, things have gone up over the last 7 years. So if that takes effect, you will see that part of your bill, again, whether you're residential or a business, you will see that increase. For residential, it'll probably be $13 to $15 a month approximately if the PUC approves it. If you're commercial, $8 to $10 a month. And if you're an industrial client, about $500 a month in increase. So electric prices are going up, your electric bills are going up, there's no question. But it's not necessarily all because of the data centers. Some impacts, but not all. So then the other part of the bill that you'll see is the generation and transmission charges, where it says supply details. If you shop competitively, like this house does, which is my house, by the way, it's separated from PPL charges. If you don't shop competitively for your supply, it would be included under the PPL, but it would say generation. So you can shop if you want to. The generation and transmission are about 64% of your bill. This is where it gets a little dicey with the data centers. So transmission, this is really electricity 101. There's a quiz. So transmission covers the cost from the generating plant to the PPL footprint. So all of the large transmission wires that you see, transmission to build and maintain those wires, that's what the transmission charge is for. So even though it's from the generating plant to the PPL site, it still is PPL. PPL owns that transmission that comes to their site. So there's a cost for that you pay on your supply costs. So even though it's over on the supply cost, it's dictated by the rates structure that's set in PPL, okay? So, and then the generation, the supply part is the actual production of the electrons to get them to you, whether it be at the hydro plant or the nuclear plant or where the gas-fired plants. That's what the generation is. So the generation, that has gone up, and it has gone up and is going up right now, but it's not necessarily related to the increase in loads. So I think everybody's going to see your bill go, unless you're locked in, you're going to see your bill keep going up and up and up. I just got an email this morning that natural gas prices just took a huge jump this morning in pricing. And then the cost of electricity really does pretty much follow the cost of natural gas, because the majority of our electricity, a lot of our electricity, I'll say, in PJM is from gas-fired plants. So it pretty much kind of parallels that. But generation costs are going to go up. There's just some capacity, higher capacity charges and things. But the transmission is definitely going up. And the more load on the grid, the more transmission costs are, the bottom line. And so right now, Pennsylvania, or PPL, is the third highest transmission cost utility in PJM. PJM is the other geographic area that dictates our pricing, and PJM is 13 states. It's the grid. It's 13 states that all collaborate together to get power to and fro everybody. So it's Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Maryland, Virginia, a little bit of North Carolina, a little bit of Kentucky, Ohio, some of Indiana, some of Illinois, some of Michigan. So that whole area is called the PJM grid. So PPL is the third highest transmission rate utility in all of those 13 states already. But we're already that high. Just for an example, in 2017, transmission rates were $24 per kilowatt per year, and this year they're $108 per kilowatt per year. That's the jump that it's taken. And there's this friction and there's this pull on more load coming on and transmission ability which relates to higher transmission cost. And those prices look like they're going to tend to go up. So that's really where you'll see it in your supply cost. But it's not because there's data centers coming in Lancaster. It's a data center issue in all of the grid. And we're kind of in the heart of it. There's a lot going on in the Midwest because there's a lot of open land. But Virginia, the East Coast is a big, big hub for data centers. So there were, excuse me, it was interesting because in the data center information that the city of Lancaster put out on their website, there was a sentence in here. It says, how is PPL protecting electric customers from incurring more than their fair share of cost? So in here it says there is cost specific to the data center, which they pay for directly, which is a substation, and then what they have to do. And then there are upgrade costs that all customers benefit from, and those costs are recovered by the FERC formula rate. The FERC formula rate is the transmission rate that we were just talking about. So those costs are recovered by the FERC formula rate and shared across all customer groups. It says the agreement requires data center customers to pay a set amount based on their peak usage, even if they use less electricity, until they pay for service in the amount equal to the socialized cost of upgrades. So hopefully, and I'm not involved in this project, but hopefully what that sentence means is that they've calculated what the increased charges are going to be. They're going to be socialized across all of the grid to all of us, and they're going to be required to do that. And I'm not saying it's not, but that's what it says here. I have another article that I just recently read. It was a study done by the Union of Concerned Scientists, and they revealed that in PJM, there were $4 billion in data center grid costs shifted to consumers. And it's just in their formulas and things. So this is just we'll hang on and let's see, is the bottom line. But what I would say to you, so that's really, is it increasing our costs? No. Data centers, yes. Yes. Oh, but that's my time. I told her, give me a high sign because I can go on, and when I start to rev up, I really go. But so the bottom line is, though, the real bottom line is, I would say, from my perspective, and this is just my perspective, bring them on in Lancaster because they're coming. They're coming. They're here. We get tax revenue. We get beneficial all kinds of things, and our prices are going to go up, but they could be building them in Hershey or Schuylkill County, and we'd have the same increase. So other than from an environmental standpoint, there's other issues, but from electrical cost, unless they don't build them, I would say, why not here? And I don't have anything in the game, but that would just be my take on it. There are things you can do real quick to offset those costs, and I think you're on that. And it's whether you're residential or commercial, but there's some efficiency and things you can do to offset your bill, but we will see. They're estimating that electricity and natural gas the experts are saying that it will go extremely high over the next couple of years. That's it.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Buck, and 15 years ago, when deregulation was really gaining momentum in Pennsylvania, we were told that we were going to be able to shop our supplier and save a lot of money. And our electric bill went up $30,000 a month in the distribution portion, the portion we had no control over. And whenever we questioned it, it was because PPL eliminated on-peak and off-peak. So we ran our plant operations on an off-peak schedule everybody had to change their personal lives to work on a third shift operation, but we did it because that was the spirit of the on-peak, off-peak advantage. And whenever I went up to Harrisburg to the PUC and talked about this, they said, well, it's really not a big issue because nobody really did what you guys were doing. We wanted people to do what you were doing, but they didn't, so that's why you're going to get the hit. We spent 2 years up in Harrisburg trying to talk about what we can do to get people to go back to the on-peak, off-peak scenario and really help the grid out. That's when I learned the utility companies never lose. And for the last 15 years, I've been really in the energy market because we're going to win. I'm going to show you some of the techniques that we've done. I do think our costs are going to go up with data centers. I've seen it with the volatility in just this past summer, which wasn't that hot. I've already seen it already with some of the cold weather. So I want to talk a little bit about PJM grid and PPL zone, and then just a couple things that we've done from the billing demand, capacity and transmission tags, which I really think this is where we are all going to get hit, and it's something that's very invisible to most people on their bills. I'm going to talk about real-time pricing and a little bit about the PPL zone versus what's called the PJM Western Hub and why I think we need to be concerned about that. So billing demand, the grid has to be built for worst case scenarios, not for the average. So once everybody turns lights on, when all the factories are running, there's an average load on the grid. But the grid has to be able to handle that worst case scenario. Everybody comes home, turns their lights on, cranks up their heat, cranks up their air conditioners in the summer. So one of the ways that the distribution costs in the bill is allocated is looking at the billing demand. That billing demand is the highest 15-minute interval for the entire month. So one 15-minute interval in 24 hours a day, 31 days a month will dictate what you pay for the distribution, the poles and wire portion of your bill. That's really about the only thing that you can control on that distribution side of your bill. It's multiplied by a rate factor. That drives the PPL, MedEd, whoever your utility is, and it can be managed. You can reduce your overall power consumption. You can look at the sequencing of your loads. You can scale back certain loads when the limits start to hit certain points. Some of that can be manual, some of that can be software controlled. So if you would look at what's called a load profile, so that would be your x-axis would be time, your y-axis would be kilowatts or megawatts, depending on what the size your load is. You can see that over the average, it may take a lower amount of electricity to run your house, run your plant, run your commercial business. But the areas that are in the red may be events where multiple air compressors are turned on at once, multiple pieces of equipment are turned on, and that causes a momentary spike, but then it comes back down. Those momentary spikes are going to dictate what you pay for electricity in the PPL zone. So if you take the load profile of our plant, for example, this would be the very high load profile showing where we're melting metal using electricity. Those would be the high spikes. And then whenever it comes back down, whenever we're in what's called a holding power and we're not melting metal, it comes back down, we jump back up again. What we try to do is we try to trim the peaks. By trimming those peaks, we've been able to take our load, which was 16 megawatts, the whole way down to a 9 megawatt load, just by clipping those green peaks. Now, that started very manual. Right now in 2025, we're pretty advanced with some software that we've developed to be able to do that. But look at the impact. $23,000 for the demand charge is what we pay today for just over a 9,000 kilowatt load, because that's $2.50 per kilowatt hour. The rest of the bill, the Act 129, that's energy efficiency that we have to pay in, a customer charge, that's a flat rate to prepare a bill. There's some credits and riders and taxes. So we pay $24,000 a month to PPL just to maintain the poles and wires to our plant. If I did not clip those peaks and we paid a demand charge on 16,000 kilowatts, that becomes a $41,000 charge. That's now a $42,000 a month bill, 71% increase in over 12 months. That's a $209,000 increase. So by just doing something simple, by looking at how you sequence and how you run your operations, you can save, you can cut your bill basically in half. And that's what we've been able to do, go from a 16 megawatt load down to a 9 megawatt load at our plant. PJM grid and PPL zone, we talked about that a lot in Lori's slide. So the blue, that's the PJM. So the Pennsylvania, Ohio, and all the other states. The PPL zone, which is where we are right now, that is right there in the purple. So we have two things to worry about: what's going on in the PPL zone and what's going on in the PJM grid. And if you blow it up into Pennsylvania, you can see all the different utility companies, and there in blue, you can see where we are. The transmission tag. So how the costs are incurred, because there's a certain amount of cost, as we mentioned, to get the power from the generating stations to the local PPL zone. All those costs need to get allocated through every customer in PPL. And the way they do that, they look at the PPL grid and they take a snapshot on the 5 highest peaking hours of the year. It actually runs December to November. It's a little bit of an offset year. And every time that grid spikes, they take a snapshot of where every single customer is at the time. And then they average those 5 hours, and that becomes a multiplier on how they allocate their costs. And typically in this PPL zone, it's a mix of cold early mornings and hot July, August afternoons. So far this year, and the year is pretty much set, we have 3 January peaks and 2 June peaks. So you can see this is the entire PPL grid. I looked at it from January through July just to show you. And this is how many megawatts that is being consumed in the PPL zone. Those 5 hours that I show would be the 5 spikes that occurred this year. Where every single customer is sitting in those 5 spikes is how all the costs are going to get allocated. I never trust utilities, and I don't think there's a lot of oversight in how the PUC checks their costs. I think they just kind of take them. So the costs are going to be presented to Harrisburg, and how the costs get allocated is going to be this methodology. There's also then what's called the capacity tag. So PJM, the entire East Coast there, they incur costs as well, and they need to allocate those costs. They use the same methodology. They take the 5 highest hours, but in this case, not just the PPL zone, the entire PJM grid, take the snapshot, and then use that average as a multiplier for the customer base. PJM, almost always hot summer afternoons. This year, it's all been June and July. And you can see it was really the end of June, and then the end of July, we had two spikes. So that is what the PJM grid did in terms of a load. So looking at the cost implications, this is a typical generation portion of the bill. This would have been the right-hand side of the bill that Lori was showing you. So you have your energy cost, $77,000. Transmission obligation, that's the spike in the PPL zone, $27,000. Then there's what's called ancillary costs. That's probably for a whole nother seminar. There's taxes at about $9,000. Then there's the capacity obligation. That's a capacity tag. That's around $7,000. there's line losses, and then there's a management fee, which is something that you can actually control. So this is a Donsco bill. We paid $145,000 for electricity last month. My transmission tag was 3,000 kilowatts. Now remember, I have my plant running at 9 megawatts. So I managed that down to 3,000 by doing operational controls in our plant. Capacity, because I know that's going to be in the summer, I took that 9,000 and I'm at 1,000. And that's still a $144,000 or $145,000 bill. Let's say I didn't do anything. And I'm not saying I'm running at my 16 megawatts, but I'm still running at my 9,000 kW. If I didn't do anything during those 5 peak hours, our bill would be $250,000 a month. That's a $105,000 increase, 73%. That's $1.3 million a year. Mr. Mann would not be happy with me. This is hard. It takes a lot, especially in a commercial, industrial application, to put these controls in place, but you can do it. You can do things to mitigate the energy price increases that we're all seeing. The other thing is real-time pricing. You have to have a tolerance for this. This is like the stock market. Every hour, the price of electricity changes. So there's a clearing price every hour, and you can choose, instead of getting a fixed price, you can have your electric bill change 24 times a day, 31 days a year, or 31 days a month. And sometimes it's losing battles and winning wars. We've been doing this for a while, and I can tell you we have some of the lowest cost power, but it comes at risk. There's more volatility. There's also some different techniques that you can do. You can be priced locally here in PPL, or you can be priced at what's called a pricing zone. Think of it as the stock market, as Wall Street is the zone that stocks are traded on. I'm going to show you something that happens here in the electric market. But real-time pricing, it's volatile. Here we're moving between $10 a megawatt hour up through $85 a megawatt hour. If I look at just the month of November, we averaged $40 per megawatt hour. That's 4 cents a kilowatt hour. That's what we paid. So we came out at 4 cents a kilowatt hour in November. That's a really, really good rate. 4 cents a kilowatt hour. A lot of things occurred. Sometimes when those spikes occurred in that graph, we did some things in the plant. We shifted some load. We did some curtailments. But we came in and we definitely won the battle in November. 4 cents a kilowatt hour. That is here in the PPL zone. If I wanted to take my index price, that hourly clearing price, and say, well, price me at what's called the PJM Western Hub, we would have been at 5.5 cents a kilowatt hour. Same amount of volatility, maybe a little bit more, a little higher swings up, a little lower swings down. But this is something that really concerns me with data centers. When I say the Western Hub, I talk about that oval that I have on the western part of Pennsylvania. It's really not one point. It's kind of a series of nodes from Erie down through Washington, D.C., but that is a major, major pricing zone for PJM because it's kind of centralized in that territory. If I get the pricing locked in at that hub, I pay what's called a basis to get it to PPL. So I either pay a positive or a negative basis from the western part of the state to get it here to Lancaster. Right now, that's running negative. So if I buy power at 5 cents on the western part of the state, it costs me 4 cents here in Lancaster today. And that is because Pennsylvania and the PPL zone is a net exporter of power. We are sending power out. This was yesterday morning. A little hard to see, but the green boxes are states that are sending power out to the grid. Red means that they're bringing power in. Pennsylvania, I believe that says 12,500 megawatts is what Pennsylvania was sending out to the PJM grid. Pennsylvania, yesterday morning, was keeping the grid running because Illinois was pushing out 7,000, but Delaware, Maryland, even North Carolina, Tennessee, and Kentucky were all taking our power. As of today, we're a net exporter, but that can change. And right here is what Lori was talking about. The projected load in PPL is this green line over 2026 to 2030, and it's supposed to double. And that can mean that we will have to be a net importer of power. So if we're now going to have to be importing power, that basis from the western part of the state to Lancaster that I said is now -1 cent, who knows what that can go to, but I can guarantee it's going to go positive. Right now, it's a 300% growth projection in PPL over the next 5 years over every other utility in PJM. So it is the highest growth rated utility zone in the entire PJM grid, which is the majority of that East Coast power. And that's why I think this is something we're really going to have to watch. That red line, or the red graph there, is the potential future pricing here versus that blue line, which is in the western part of the state. And what that delta is, who knows? A penny, 2 pennies, 3 pennies. I don't know what that can grow to, but that is why we are taking a lot of the energy strategies to control our demand, to control our load. We're doing things like demand response, frequency response. So there are ways to control your energy costs short of stopping data centers or being down in Washington, D.C. and changing policy. Thank you.
Well, I will quickly say thank you again to all of our speakers. We have a few minutes for questions. And because we have 3 different speakers here today, if you have a specific question that you want to direct at a speaker, just let them know, Eric, Lori, and Chris, and direct your question at that. Would anyone like to kick us off? There we go.
I think this is probably best for Chris. So I can see expanding your process, and it begins to look like the virtual power plant that a number of grids have tried to implement. What is, do you think, the capacity in PJM to utilize the virtual power plant? I mean, how much room is there if they were really to push it and to automate it?
I can't speak to everybody in PJM or PPL. So right now we're kind of acting as a virtual power plant through demand response. So we do synchronous reserves, which means we get basically we get a 10-minute notification and we have to drop load. And they can take the load down for 30 minutes at a time, but they can do that as many times as they want. And then we do another program where we get a 30-minute notification, and then we have to drop load, and they can leave us down for at least 4 hours or more. That 9 megawatts, I'm giving them 7. So that is how much of our plant that I'm giving. What's that? 2/3 of our plant capacity, I'm giving back to the grid so that they could actually look at us as a virtual power plant. I don't know if everybody's giving that much, but I know that we have the tolerance to give up 2/3 of our power whenever needed, up with the short of a 10-minute notice.
Other questions?
I just wanted to respond to that real quick. I can't answer how much, or how, is it a possibility to do it? But what I can say is you guys have done a great job of altering your load and your melt hours and all of that. There are so many industries that can't do that, right? They run 24/7 or they just can't. So unfortunately, at the peaks, and that's really what it is, at the peaks is when the real issue is. like that 3 to 5 or 4 to 6 o'clock hour, or in the early mornings. There are just a lot of plants, big users that can't do that. Their homes and everything, your smart meters, there's a lot there. You know, they're setting up smart meters, so there is a lot that can be saved. There's been some controversy whether they want to be able to give credit to that and do that. There's a lot of kind of back talk about that, you know, behind closed doors. Do they want to use that as a resource versus building new power plants?
Is there any other place other than going online to buy that, instead of using PP&L rates for the transmission is there any other place to buy that than just going online and shopping it every so often? And is it better to lock in for like a year, or should you just lock in for 3 months? Or what do you recommend now for people that maybe their little contract or whatever's coming up? What should they be doing in their house or their business?
So I was just on yesterday because our house is up at the end of December. There was nothing online that was better than PPL's default rate. So PPL's default rate will started December 1st. This time will go through May 30th. I will tell you, if you call, I think it was Best Buy, and really negotiate them, I got lower, but it took some talking. But right now, if you do shop competitively and it's up soon, I would make sure you watch it and don't let it slip, because it will be very high if you go month to month. And you would probably want to just call them and stay with PPL default rate for right now. And just watch it every month. It's a really good idea not to wait till your contract's up, but just watch it every month to see if you can, there's just a dip in the market, and then you can capitalize on that sometimes. But for residentially, there's not a lot.
Most of them do not have cancellation fees too. So if you want to lock in for 6 months and then you find something else come up lower on papowerswitch.com, call and cancel.
Yeah.
Thanks for the great presentation. I couldn't affirm more. I think Chris and Lori, both of you, talking about how we can reduce our footprint, both personally and in the job that I had. We found ways to reduce. I was at a company where we had the smallest electric bill about 3 years ago that we had in the prior 15. So there's things you can do, and whether it's your lighting, the way you heat or cool your house, and so forth, to mitigate some of these increases that will be coming. So I would just want to echo that and agree with Lori's comment about just staying alert to what you can do to save. I jumped on my December expiration about 30 days ago, and I was able to get in at about 11 cents. So it really does take a little effort. Most of us like to just keep it out of sight, out of mind, but with these rising energy costs, you have a lot of opportunity to at least try to save some of that money.
Sorry, we ran a little bit over with our question time, so that's all the time we have for questions today. If we could, I'd love to just give another round of applause to our speakers. As this is our last forum in 2025 for the Hourglass, I want to thank all of you for showing up every month, supporting us in our work, and being able to dive into these quality of life issues that everyone's curious about. So thank you for being here. Next month in January, we will do our annual Ask the Commissioners Forum. We will have all 3 commissioners here to answer your questions. And I want to clarify 2 things about this. So it is not our typical first Friday forum. As you'll know, the first Friday in January is January 2nd. It seems like we all need a little more time after the new year to get back into things. So we will be here on January 9th, the second Friday. And we will not be in this room because of some maintenance going on at the Ware Center. We will be in the very front, first floor outside of the auditorium. So we look forward to seeing you there. A video of this forum will be available sometime next week, and I encourage you to share that with people who weren't here today who would be interested in learning about this information. Thank you all so much for being here. Stay warm out there and have a good weekend.